Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shahid Ahmed, and welcome to the IoT and blockchain session. I'd like to welcome everybody physically here, and those of you virtually joining us, welcome as well. Today we're going to talk about the specific use cases related to how blockchain could be applied to IoT. As we have witnessed in this post-COVID and COVID world, supply chains all over the world have pretty much weakened as a result of this pandemic. Things like bill of lading and food and beverage industries have been impacted materially. I think there's a very strong business case for blockchain, and hopefully we'll hear from some of our speakers. We have 4 speakers today. We have Yogesh Lula from PCCW, Jose Luis from Telefonica, he's going to be joining us in a few minutes, Paul Brody from E&Y, and Jens Gauden from DHL. He'll also be joining us via remote virtual. So with that, Yogesh, I'm going to turn this over to you. I think you're here, and here's the clicker. Thank you.
Hey guys, good afternoon. My name is Yogesh Lulla. I'm the Vice President in PCCW Global for Mobility, Voice, and IoT. Before I start, I must say that it's a privilege to be standing in front of you. We might admit that it's a privilege for all of us to see each other face to face, back to civilization. Well, let's admit that time's not exciting anymore. It's not much fun to travel. Because historically, when we would travel, we would meet all the beautiful people around the world, hug them, greet them, give them some kisses, which we can't do anymore. Lately, meeting anybody is like entering a boxing ring. Everybody gives you a wrist. So I'm here to present on blockchain, IoT, and artificial intelligence. Let's deep dive into that. I think we in PCCW Global truly believe that blockchain, IoT, and AI truly has the ability of changing the definition of humanity. In other words, the data would be a key. Data would be a very strong tool for all of us. And this data, collected by the IoT devices, managed by the ledgers, what we call the blockchain, the distributed ledgers, governed by smart contracts and settled by some kind of crypto assets. This is the key at the moment. Now, I do appreciate that all this data and technology has some kind of challenges. I'm going to walk you through some challenges during the course of my presentation. Before I go ahead, let's take a step back, guys. We do understand that in terms of the world suffering due to pandemics, no country is immune. I'm an amalgamation of Indonesian and Indian blood. So I come from 2 highly populated countries in the world. A study recently showed that developing countries are suffering a lot. That's probably because lack of resources. About 5 to 7% of Indians live outside India. And all these 5 to 7% Indians have the ability of contributing maybe $5 or $10 to their fellow citizens in India. Now, if all of these could have contributed, we could have spoken about $6 billion of investments or contributions to the underprivileged on a yearly basis. The question is, why don't we do that? Why doesn't anyone want to contribute towards the economy or the underprivileged? The right answer is trust. We, as humans, don't trust that whatever goes out of a pocket is delivered in the right cause. We don't trust that the middlemen are giving us full traceability of any transaction. What's a transaction? You might ask that. A transaction is when 2 parties come together to have a common goal, to have some kind of an outcome. Blockchain infuses this kind of a trust in any transaction, making it immutable. Now, historically, there would be banks or some kind of government organizations who would try to infuse some kind of trust in a transaction. Going forward, we don't want middlemen. We want technology. We want the digital transformation to infuse this kind of a trust. So blockchain eventually with IoT can validate, certify, and audit every transaction. Now, what do economists want? An economist wants a marketplace with minimum errors, with minimum kind of an investment towards redoing it. And IoT that we know of, IoT basically consists of small transactions, but millions, billions, and if I may, trillions of transactions eventually. Does the human brain have the ability to compute these transactions? The answer is no. I think you might agree that the human brain has reached a plateau, and eventually we need computational power to verify, network, and transact and settle the transactions. Also, any transaction of IoT, which is small in nature, but multiple in nature, we can't have physical resources to manage that. It won't make it viable for business if that does happen. I think blockchain eventually digitizes the real world attributes. Let me give you a real example. In terms of pacemaker that monitors the heart, now the doctor does not need to wait for the end of the month. He can get a real-time attribute of how the heart is functioning, of how they're performing. In terms of IV, an IV machine with sensors can eventually determine if the patient is in pain or the pain is reducing. Eventually, it can change the implementation of IV in human beings. In the airline industry, which we all well versed with, why do we need to wait for a black box? Why can't we get the attributes and the elements in real time? That's again the power of blockchain. IoT adds value to blockchain and vice versa. What does it mean? IoT, as I said, is millions and trillions of transactions. All these transactions have to be analyzed in real time. Who does that? Blockchain. At the same time, on the contrary, a blockchain technology cannot function unless it gets a huge amount of data input. This is why they both help each other. In terms of logistics, I think, let me give you an example of PCCW Global. In our company, we had a real customer. This customer was exporting avocados around the world. Eventually, he was suffering huge losses because at the last mile, the avocados were getting rejected because they were inedible. Whom does this exporter hold accountable for such a transaction? With IoT, it determines that when avocado needs to be exported, there has to be a specific temperature from end to end. Now, sitting in his office, he gets a real-time analysis of what is the temperature at any given point of time. That's again the magic of IoT. Blockchain enables trust in IoT by validating data life cycles. Blockchain enables trust by encrypting the data, making it immutable at any point of time, making sure there is no manual intervention, there is no human error while you input the data. As a system or a use case becomes more complex, the blockchain value increases. I must admit, it's not an easy journey. Any journey, any industrial revolution has never been easy. The first is the ecosystem complexity. Now, for blockchain to function, we need a panel to first understand who would be a part of this panel and who would not be there. Who would write the codes? Because you might admit that blockchain is a rigid technology. Once the codes are developed, you can't change it. It's immutable. The governance. Historically, we would use some kind of middle parties. Do we need governance over here? We don't. Who decides on the governance? This is why there are some institutions which would be important and play a key role in bringing the valid players on the same table. Now, technology scalability. This is probably the easiest to manage. With times going forward, we understand that scalability may not be an issue, but comes with a cost. Now, until 2020, there was an investment of $5 billion towards blockchain. By 25, we're talking about $40 billion of investments. Even though we might admit that this is a key to invest in technology, but financially, it's a huge hit. The last, the human flexibility. Now, the technology is bringing the world closer, but let's admit that with the world facing geopolitical challenges, political challenges, a human flexibility is not the easiest to manage. So IoT and blockchain do bring a paradigm shift. It removes the input error, it manages data, provides trust, and decisions made by AI. What is AI? Artificial intelligence learns with trial and error mode. To define artificial intelligence, let me give an example of a child. When a child learns to walk, he doesn't need to learn physics to be able to stand on his feet. He gets data from his parents, from the surrounding, from each and every person who's walking. He gets up and tries to walk. He falls, he gets up again. So he's taking data from everybody. This is exactly how an AI works. Eventually, the child starts running. We might admit that we as humans spend the first 5 years in teaching a child how to talk. And then we spend the entire life in asking the same child to keep quiet. So that's a human strategy. And eventually, a converged approach is vital. Now, this is about us organizations. In the past, there were errors. We were working in silos. There was no convergence. Manual processes, data misalignment. We were bound by an organization. In the current scenario, we are trying to automate internal and external processes. Industry standards. Now, we need collaborations from the likes of C-band, GSMA, MEF, and MOBI. We need cloud connectivity. I've mentioned Console Connect over here. If you may know, Console Connect is an ecosystem that PCCW Global has created, which facilitates cloud-to-cloud and network-to-network integration in real time. And we are trying to add a layer of blockchain technology on top of it and smart contracts. We're trying to tokenize our existing inventory and partner with our colleagues over here with different organizations to come out with some kind of a strategy together. The future, of course, is lifecycle management, automation, and real-time IoT. Before I end, I want to say that we humans are adapting. We have never adapted so fast. Even the Google CEO says that the amount of investment and the amount of studies done in AI is more profound than electricity or fire. So let's give it to ourselves, guys. We are trying to change the world every day. We're trying to learn every day. So let's give a round of applause for ourselves to change the future. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Yogesh.
No problem.
Thanks, Yogesh. A couple of takeaways: trust, governance, and I really like the $40 billion investment over the next few years in blockchain. Thank you for that. Our next speaker is Jose Luis from Telefonica. He's going to be joining us virtually, so I'm going to let our guys at the back team up. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Shahid, for your kind introduction. I'm José Luis Núñez, and I'm leading the blockchain business unit as part of Telefónica Tech. The title of this session, Blockchain in IoT, is very relevant for my organization. In fact, our mission in Telefónica Tech is to get the most of the global capabilities of Telefónica in technologies like IoT, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. We want to transform data collected by device, mobile networks, and other sources into valuable information for companies. Some years ago, the focus in the Internet of Things was to connect the things. The more things connected, the better. Lately, we are trying to transform the connected things in smart things. Connecting the things is useless if we don't take advantage of the data they collect. We are adding data analytics and artificial intelligence to get valuable business insights and build data-driven organizations. And now we are adding a new variable to the formula. Of course, we are talking about blockchain. Focusing on convergence between blockchain and IoT, we think that the key contribution is summarized in the title of this keynote. All of us know the benefits of blockchain for businesses in terms of immutability and transparency of operations. Everything to build a trustworthy ecosystem on top of that. So, taking these benefits to the IoT world, we are moving from just collecting and sending data to improve decision-making processes to allow everyone to verify the quality of the data collected. So, thanks to blockchain, the data collected by the things become immutable and completely reliable. Things are now trustworthy. No one can question either the data the device collects or therefore the decisions made on the basis of that data. As the title says, we are moving to a new stage, from connecting things to make them totally trustworthy. But what does exactly mean? When we talk about IoT, we are talking about decentralization, telemetry, as far as many use cases talk about telemetry, data collection, and of course, data-driven decisions. Based on that decisions, probably we send back commands to the things to change their behavior or to gather extra data. Thanks to the decentralization, we can even build a mesh of devices collecting data and learning about their next action. When we talk about blockchain, we are talking again about decentralization, but also of cryptography, transactions, data immutability, and traceability. We build on top lots of solutions for asset traceability or peer-to-peer financial services. If you directly apply blockchain to IoT ecosystems, we can address some of the security and privacy issues that we always face when deploying IoT solutions. But if we merge both worlds, we enter in a new one, what we call the blockchain of things. In the blockchain of things, obviously, we have decentralization. Telemetry exists, but we understand it like transactions recorded in sequence and cryptographically fixed. Things keep collecting data, but data now becomes an immutable and sequential set of records. So all the decisions made from the basis of that data can't be challenged because the things are completely trustworthy. Anyone can blindly trust in them. Two concepts are key in this approach. Beyond things and devices considered individually, they all form a network. We have absolute confidence in the data sent by each of the devices in the network. But we also have absolute confidence about when each device records the data, and so the device that did it before. This sequence of records allow us to resolve any disputes between them with third-party interpretations. Nobody can doubt about the devices, the data, or its sequence. Nobody needs a third party to eventually solve and decide the disputes. This is the true magic of the blockchain of things for companies exploiting IoT networks. We build extra confidence for data-driven organization. So much for the what. Now let's talk about how to add blockchain and IoT to your solution. This is a high-level vision of elements involved in an IoT ecosystem. As we move to the right in the image, we find components with more computing power, more flexibility, but at the same time, more chance for the collected data to be tampered with. There are two approaches to technically mix blockchain and IoT. The first one is to embed a blockchain node in your IoT element. The second one is that the elements send the data in the most secure and reliable way to the blockchain nodes. The first one has a lot of restrictions and practical issues. A blockchain node have to synchronize all the data in the blockchain. They have to run heavy consensus protocols and have a lot of connections with the rest of the nodes in the network. These requirements make virtually infeasible for the leftmost element to embed a node. Even when we have enough resources to run it, the connectivity requirements make it difficult to deploy the nodes close or embed in your solution backends. So in Telefonica, we decided that the second alternative is easier to implement and have to face less technical constraint. However, we keep the integrity of the solution, and we can guarantee in the same way that the evidence of the data exchange. When we have to choose the right element in the chain to send the data, we have to assess the pros and cons and select the best options considering the concrete case. If you want to have absolute confidence in the integrity of the data, then probably you want to minimize the options for tampering, and you'll try to record the data as close as possible to the source where it is generated. You probably can't modify or act over the sensor, so if you can do it, the best option is to change the software in the device to make it work. In this case, you can use the cryptographic keys deployed by the manufacturer to sign the transaction and prove with no doubts the device that is recording the data in the blockchain. You can identify the device, but you can also guarantee the integrity of the data itself. However, you have to access to the manufacturer or having the ability to update the device when or even after deploying it. This is not always possible, so you probably have to give up the device and go through the options farther to the right. On the other side, probably the easiest way to send both the data or even some processed insights like alerts or command triggered by the data to the blockchain is getting them from the cloud platforms that you are already using to process the data. All commercial solutions allow us to deploy easy-to-develop microservices to get the data uploaded by the device and forward them to other platforms, in our case, the blockchain nodes. The question that should guide you to design your solution is, what do you want to use the blockchain for? If you want to assure your data are tamper-proof, probably you have to act on the devices. Otherwise, probably getting the data or the insight from the cloud platforms is enough to provide both evidence of the data exchange or to trace the data-driven decisions. It is also relevant if we are trying to add blockchain to an existing solution or if you are designing it from scratch. In this last case, you can select the elements for your solution that fits better with your budget and your goals. If you already have devices deployed in operation and sending data to a cloud platform, you probably have to face with several technical constraints, including that you can update or change the software being executed by the device. So the easiest way to add blockchain is to identify the data you want to add confidence to and where in your business processes and application it is available. Once you have identified it, get it and forward it to the blockchain. That's all. Now that data is immutable and becomes an evidence to prove anyone whatever the data means. Finally, what do we need to usually see solutions implementing the blockchain of things? Current deployments are using IoT or blockchain, but very few are combining the benefits of both technologies. First, blockchains are not easily accessible for everyone yet. There are very few zero-code blockchain solutions in the industry helping companies to connect with the benefits of technology. Companies still think that entering blockchain is out of its scope. They think about blockchain in terms of big projects managed by the big companies spending a lot of time on resources. This is not true. The path we are following at Telefonica with TrustOS, our operating system for trust, is just destroying that belief. TrustOS allows any company, regardless its size or technical profile, to invoke blockchain capabilities as easy like any other web service available in the internet. And second, we have to achieve that deploying a new IoT device to record the data it collects on any blockchain must be as easy as it is today to connect it to your favorite IoT cloud platform. We are also working for this in Telefonica, enabling libraries and interface to directly connect the device with blockchain through TrustOS. And that's all the thoughts that I wanted to share with you today about blockchain and IoT. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you find it interesting enough.
Thank you, Jose. My key takeaways were we got to find a way to simplify blockchain so a regular enterprise could help implement it. And it's not your typical IT or telco skill set. It requires cryptographic knowledge, mathematics. We were just talking about that earlier with Paul Brody. And so companies like E&Y can help implement this. So with that, I'm going to invite Paul to come up, sir.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. This is the first time that I have stood up on a stage in front of live human beings in over a year. So it's really, really nice. My sartorial skills have really gone downhill, but they say to dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. So I personally am aiming for unemployed billionaire. But in the meantime, I would love to talk to you about blockchain and IoT, which is one of my great passions. I've been at EY for about 6 years now, leading the blockchain team for almost all of that time. And in particular, one of the things that I have spent a lot of time thinking about, even before I joined EY, is this question of how do we make digital transactions, digital twins, IoT systems transactable. We used to say when I was previously working at IBM, and I worked in blockchain there as well, that we didn't really know what the Internet of Things was going to be for. We didn't know how it was going to be monetized, but we believed that it would be monetized. And this is one of the reasons why we picked blockchain technology early on for thinking about IoT was it comes with this pre-built infrastructure of payments and accounts and transactions and contracts that make the things that you are going to do out in the real world transactable. So with that, let me share with you a few thoughts. So first of all, I think it's possible with blockchain to basically build a model of any business process. And if you think about sort of the way businesses work, they come down to sort of almost all business agreements are basically this. I have money, you have stuff, and we are going to exchange those things under the terms of some kind of agreement, volume discounts, rebates, whatever it is. So I can represent the stuff and the money as a digital token, right? And I can also use a smart contract to define the relationship between those two, not just the business process, but also the legal agreement. So the money and the stuff in the exchange are covered with tokens and smart contracts. And then if I throw some analytics on top of that, I can even sort of look back and understand what happened in that business transaction. So my goal is to have a transactable business model in that process. Right? So if I think about a supply chain, and I spent many years in supply chain, supply chains can be integrated from start to finish using blockchain technology. Right? And I would use them starting by creating a digital twin. So I've got my raw materials, my manufacturing, transport, sales, distribution. What I was told when I started in the supply chain industry, it said buy, make, move, store, and sell. If you can remember those 5 things, you will always know what you're talking about in supply chain. I don't know that that was really true, but it's what I've been using ever since. Right? So if I can represent all of the stuff in that supply chain, real or virtual, as tokens, and then I can represent the relationships as they move with the smart contracts, I have a complete digital model of the supply chain. Now, what matters is, how do I make that transactable? How do I make it possible to buy, sell, and transact in every part of that process? The first thing is, I've got to make the digital token work correctly. So let's take something like a car, right? I can't just say, hey, that's a car, so I'm going to create a token to represent the car. You need to think about a couple of things, which is just like in the real world, we separate the physical asset from the legal ownership. You want to do the same thing in the world of blockchain. So from my car, I actually have 2 tokens. I'm going to have a legal ownership token, and I'm going to have a physical asset token. And against those tokens, I can start delivering services. So if I have a legal asset token, I could borrow against that asset, I could get insurance, I can get operating leases. How many of you have heard about DeFi, Decentralized Finance? So DeFi are sets of smart contracts that let you deliver services against other tokens. So if I have an asset token, it could be a dollar token or it could be a car token, I can put it into a lending contract, a deposit contract, a leasing contract, an insurance contract, and suddenly I can start to do things with those assets. And by the way, the same thing will increasingly be true in the future about the physical side of this, the physical token, and this is where we will need IoT in a very big way, right? So if a shipping company has the car and they have a token that represents that car in their wallet, that does not mean that they own the car. It means they have possession of it, right? So nearly every stage of this process needs to be managed with IoT. So if I think about the car, right, location, right, I need to know that. So is a product available? Could I lease out my car to somebody else, right? What condition is it in, right? We actually built at EY, we built a system for leasing cars using the blockchain. And of course, we had to keep track of, are you a good driver or a bad driver? Do you maintain the car? Do you charge it or do you put gas in it? Do you take it in for its scheduled maintenance? Customer access, right? If it's IoT connected, and you've purchased that capacity using a blockchain-based smart contract, how do you get access to it? And of course, what is the residual asset value, right? After you've put 100,000 miles on your car or your truck, you can't just get the same value against that item. All of those things depend on IoT connectivity in that ecosystem, right? Additionally, right, if we want to build ecosystems, we need objective performance criteria. One of the things that exists in the blockchain ecosystem is this idea of building what they call protocols. Protocols around a product or a service. You'll hear people talk a lot in the world of blockchain about developing these kinds of new protocols. But in order to do that, you need to meet a couple of important conditions. The first is you've got to be able to tokenize the product, right? If I can't accurately represent what I'm selling or sharing with you as a digital token, as a proper commodity, you can't buy it, right? But with a car, that's pretty easy to do. If we're super fussy about the car, that's a problem. But if we think of the car as just transportation as a commodity, we can tokenize that product. So tokenized products, they need to be commoditized, and they need to be in some way shareable, either they're easy to transfer or access, right? Cars are a really good example. Cars, trucks, warehouse space. I believe we will have all kinds of ecosystems that will be built around these digital standardizable commodities for industrial usage. Secondly, though, not only do we need a token that we can use to productize, transfer, and manage those assets, right? And then if we can represent a standard token model, then anybody who's got a truck or leasing space or warehouse capacity can deploy that as a token into a marketplace, right? But secondly, we also need governance, right? A lot of the way these protocols work in blockchain ecosystems is they're decentralized, but you do need governance. Governance usually goes to the participants in the ecosystem. So imagine all of us in this room, we all form a shared protocol ecosystem for warehouse capacity, and each one of us is contributing some capacity. Well, we all need to be able to make decisions together about how will we change the rules, right? One of the things that I believe will make blockchain incredibly compelling to enterprises is the fact that these decentralized protocols aren't controlled by a single entity. If you're a company and you've got warehouse capacity or computing capacity or bandwidth, whatever it is, and somebody wants you to contribute that into their business ecosystem, it's a little unnerving because we keep seeing these examples over and over again of large enterprises that control digital markets that change the rules on you. You know it when you click the box as a consumer. You get in there, you click the box, and if you read the fine print, which no one does, but if you read the fine print, what you'll see is it says, we can change the terms of our agreement with you whenever we want and however we want. That is not a fair deal. And as consumers, we tend to click OK because we don't really have time to deal with it. But as enterprises, that's scary. That's the future of your company. But if you're going to build an ecosystem and you want governance, this decentralized governance, great, but it also requires some important stuff. Number one, you need access control. How do I get people access to what they need? Number two, we need community staking. What is the stake that you have in this protocol, right? If I have 50 units of warehouse capacity and you have 200, your stake is bigger than mine. At least in an economic protocol, not a democracy, but certainly in an economic protocol, you probably should have a bigger say in the future of that ecosystem. And by the way these protocols all work is if you behave well. If you say your warehouse capacity is available and it's always available when you say it is, then you get more rewards. And if you are dishonest or you don't operate with integrity and you say my capacity is available and you sold it, and then when the person comes to use that capacity it's not available, you should get penalized for that. So there are all the rules in that community, and for that you need access control, you need staking, and also really, really importantly, you need objective performance data. This is probably one of the single most important things that IoT can contribute. If IoT data can tell us, was it available, did you use it, was it put in on time, where did it go, then we can have objective performance criteria for building up that ecosystem. And I believe that's going to be a really important contribution of sort of the IoT contribution to these industrial ecosystems. I got just a couple minutes left. I personally see a lot of ecosystems emerging. The most common one that we've already seen is financial services. The reason financial services got a head start on everybody else is fairly simple. You just don't need a lot of external data, right? You don't need to know where that dollar is. It's electronic. It's already covered. But I foresee that we will have physical supply chains, right? Protocols built around that. We'll have sharing economy. We'll have industry clusters of specialized, standardized, tokenized goods, products, and services. And embedded into all of them will be financial services, right? If I have an asset and it's digitally represented and it's worth money, I'm going to be able to borrow against it, insure it against it. You know, financial services is going to be everywhere in the future. It's not going to be confined to, hey, I bought this item and I owe payments on it. It's going to be tightly integrated with the decision to purchase itself. Three key characteristics I would ask you to remember in terms of what makes this blockchain ecosystems so fast developing. In the space, just to give you a sense of the speed, over the last 18 months, we've gone from about $1 billion in decentralized finance to over $100 billion invested. Right? That's an astonishing, even though it's a drop in the bucket from a global perspective, it's a very, very rapid ramp up. And the key characteristics that make that possible are a decentralized infrastructure. No one's in absolute control, which is a good thing. Interoperability. My token works with your smart contract. It makes it easy. And then permissionless. If you own an asset, you do not have to ask somebody else permission to use it in the way you want. And you may think that makes perfect sense, but that is not how most of the internet works. Through APIs, you need permission from others, and that makes it less useful and a slower process. Because as we all know, you can never ever be successful when you ask for permission. The answer is always, let's form a committee to study it. And I'm not just saying that because I work at an accounting firm where we invented committees to study things. We're in the early stages of this process. Right? And in this stage of the process, what you should see are these basic building blocks, right? Just like the internet. And I would draw this analogy, and I would ask you to think carefully about it. We started on the internet with very basic building blocks, and we went on to very predictable results. In fact, we did stuff online that we did offline, but worse. But what you have to remember is over time, we got better at it. We got better and better at it, and the solutions we came up with more disruptive. And finally, we came up with stuff that I'd like to joke is what nobody expected. And this, if I have sort of any final closing comment, it's this. Most people don't realize when they're being disrupted. They think, I'll know. I'll have some moment, my revenues will collapse, my profits will disappear, and I'll know that I'm in grave danger. That's not what happens. It's very rare that you get this kind of moment where product substitution happens. Instead, what happens overwhelmingly is the growth moves to a new category. So it's not that your business disappears overnight, it's that you remain profitable, you're just irrelevant. right? And because of that, disruption is, in fact, in more cases than not, it is painless, it's invisible, and you don't even realize that you've been passed by until you wake up one morning and that little ecosystem that you dismissed as small and irrelevant is now far larger than your main business. So take blockchain seriously, and when you look at it and you think to yourself, wow, this is incredibly immature, do not think, I guess I don't have to worry about it. Think this is a good time for me to get engaged. With that, I'm just over my time. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a real human audience. It was awesome.
Take a seat there.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thanks, Paul. My key takeaways were the importance of decentralization, interoperability, and permissionless. Permissionless is something we should all be paying attention to. For a long time, there was a debate between permission networks and permissionless networks, but I think the pendulum's now shifting towards permissionless. Our next speaker is Jens Gouden from DHL. So I'm going to turn it over to the guys in the back to team up. He's going to be joining us remotely. Jens?
Dear Global Tech Community, please allow me to thank the Mobile World Congress to be able to present to you about DHL supply chain and our vision on the supply chains of the future. Today, I'll talk about digital supply chains in a bit of detail, and more specifically, I'll try to bring you real live cases on how we implement Internet of Things solutions and blockchain. My name is Jens Gouden. I'm the Vice President of the Technology Sector for DHL Supply Chain in EMEA. And as a consequence of that, digitization of supply chains is really close to my heart. The development, implementation, and preparing for the future next generation of networks is really what my customers do. It's their core business. And that's why it's so important to me to stay with them and implement with them what is important for them as a company. It's really the core business of my customers. I have the luck of being able to work with the real tech leaders, and that's why in the next 10 minutes, I will try to take you through the journey of what we believe digitization brings to us as a company and how it can create benefits to my customers, but more in general, actually, to the logistics industry. I will tell you a bit about what we believe are going to be the future trends in logistics, more specifically in warehousing processes. And as I said, I will focus on a few real cases of implementation of blockchain technology and connected devices that actually are in place already today. It's no longer the future. We are implementing already now. So let me explain why it is so important for us and why we are so excited to think with you about the supply chain of tomorrow. Now, for us, that all starts with the fact that as a company, we can only grow by delighting our customers, right? And delighting our customers, we can only achieve by bringing innovative logistics solutions. Now, as a leader of the tech sector, I do not need to explain you that my tech customers are really, really demanding there. I mean, they are working on innovation every day, so they expect the same for us. And that is why specifically in the tech sector, being a leader in innovation is so important for me as a business leader. But of course, it's not only limited to the tech sector. I mean, all our customers across the logistics chain expect from us as a leader in the market to bring innovation to their supply chains. And in order to understand what they want from us, we've done some research around how our customers look at digitalization of supply chains today and what they believe is important, and more importantly, what benefits they are looking for in implementing new digital solutions. So when asking our customers about digitalization of supply chains, 82% of them gave us an insight that actually already today, so not in the future, but already today, digitalization of the supply chain has a moderate to high impact on how they run their logistics business. And 73% actually already today consider big data so blockchain and connected devices and how to deal with that, as the most significant information technology for their supply chain. So clearly the topic chosen by the Mobile World Congress to be presented today is actual and very relevant. Then let's talk a bit about the theory, right? And I want to do that by sharing insights that were published recently by Sabine Müller, the CEO of DHL Consulting. And she identified areas that she believes are going to be really driving the transformation of our business. Really technologies that look promising today and where we see first implementations. And of course, for today, I said I'll dig deeper on blockchain and big data. So let's start with blockchain, the first element. Now, as just said, supply chains have always worked based on a linear step-by-step process, right? And they largely still do. Now, blockchain allows us to no longer rely on that step-by-step linear information. And as a 3PL, it allows us to overcome a lot of the disadvantages of the fragmented approach and setup of logistics. So specifically on blockchain, there's been a lot of work done with multiple partners and customers. But one example that I want to share with you is a recent implementation with our customers Cisco systems. I think everybody of you in the tech world knows Cisco, so no need to explanation there. But the way they run their supply chain is fairly specific because they have decided to outsource the end-to-end supply chain to many different partners, and we have the look as DHL supply chain to be one of their chosen strategic partners. But you know, this setup of outsourcing of global logistics and fully outsourcing it generates a very complex system landscape and a need for integration with many different partners in order to be able to serve Cisco customers in more than 100 customers. So specifically on the aftermarket service parts element, Cisco was actually looking for opportunities to, first of all, reduce cost, which touched upon it earlier when I shared a bit of the research, but not only reduce cost, but also increase customer service and make sure that they get full visibility and better visibility on their service shipment data in order to serve their customers better. So there was a very, let's say, classical B2B linear setup of information sharing. And together with Cisco, we have now developed a blockchain solution that actually ticks a lot of the boxes. Consider it a fairly small project on a limited scope. So as I said, it was focused really around global service parts delivery, but it actually proves that a blockchain solution for logistics proves value and can work. The pilot showed us, if we want to call it a pilot, or the project showed us that we can onboard new partners in the supply chain in a much faster and cheaper way. There is actually reduced cost compared to the setup of B2B interaction between the parties and the related support to that. One important benefit is that the blockchain solution being put in place actually allows us to push changes faster into the global network, which is of major importance when we talk supply chain agility and being able to act fast on events that happen in the supply chain. And last but not least, and important to me, as it proves that it's not only about cost, better access and faster access to data has also allowed Cisco to serve their customer better. Better visibility allowed them to increase actually the service level delivered to the customer. So this example, even if it was on a limited scope, proves for us that blockchain is a solution that is fit for the future and it works for our industry. Now, let's leave blockchain for a while and jump to connected devices. A bit of a different topic, but of course related. And it needs to be said that in the industry, no one doubts anymore now that connected devices are, generating huge amount of data that companies that want to be successful in the future will need to turn into value. And that value in logistics can be that we learn from patterns to become more productive and reliable in supply chains, and streamline how goods move to the chain. And reference to what I said in the introduction, we believe that more performant networks, including the mass rollout of 5G that we see happening today, is of real importance there. I mean, stronger networks will allow us to have more connected devices, faster access to data, and will be a new era of how we manage supply chains and productivities within our warehouses. So that's the future. I believe there is a lot more to come, but there is applications already today, of course, of connected devices, and there is a few very tangible outcomes that we already work with today and that are in place. And an important one is that by taking the data of connected devices in our warehouse environment, we can record near collisions in the warehouse. And by doing that, we can actually put preventive actions in place to keep our employees safe. We can make heat maps in real time of where the activity in our warehouses happens on a day-to-day basis in a relatively cheap way. Actually, the access to the data is relatively easy to manage for us, and it helps us to, of course, increase productivity in the warehouses because of analysis of the heat maps. But again, also there is a safety aspect. We can monitor safety of our staff a lot better and in a far more proactive mode. And then last but not least, we can track utilization of our assets in a better way, which has an immediate impact on our bottom line. So those may not be or may not look very spectacular, but in the way we manage our warehouses and in the way that our supervisors, team leaders interact with their teams, those are real changes that are happening today. Now, more spectacular, of course, and connected to the topic is the example of robotic innovation and autonomous vehicles in the warehouses, and that is really a hot topic today, right? Because already today we see robotics implemented in our warehouses, and we truly believe that the next big step in robotics is really going to be outside the traditional manufacturing area, right? And I believe, and we believe, that the warehousing space is going to be the next hotspot. And connected devices, of course, are critical for that deployment. We can't put autonomous vehicles, robotics in place without connecting them to our systems in how we operate. Now, that's all nice in theory, I hear you say, or I hear you, or I see you think, but of course, then how do we implement that, right? Because that is really the killer question. We can do a lot of theory, we can do a lot of pilots, but in the end, it all comes down to how do we implement new technologies in our operation. And for us, the answer to that really lies in our accelerated digitization strategy and the teams that we have deployed across the globe to put that in place. And the goal of those teams is really to bring proven technologies in a faster way to more sites, because that's how we bring real benefits to our customers. So we believe that the efforts that we do to bring digital solutions, innovative solutions faster to our sites sets us apart from what many in the industries do, and it contributes in many different ways to our strategy. It improves our bottom line, it improves our customer satisfaction, because customers expect innovation for us, but it's also positive to our employee satisfaction. So that is why we have a lot of focus and a very structured and methodologic approach of bringing proven technologies in a faster way to more of our operations. That is basically what it So allowing me to wrap up how we implement, I would say that it is really about a coordinated and structured effort to bring proven digital solutions to the sites where we believe that they make a difference. And that is how we can bring the fitting technology to the right site in a faster way. So allow me to come to the final part of the presentation. And of course, I cannot do without a reference to the pandemic, right? Because the pandemic has really changed the way we operate in the logistics industry. I mean, sure, there was already a booming trend of e-commerce, direct to consumer, but the pandemic has accelerated that as never before. And we have actually seen now over the last 1.5 years a glimpse of what the supply chain of the future will look like in a much faster way. It clearly has speeded up the introduction of new technologies and automation in our warehouses, but I'm sure not only in ours, right? Also in other warehouses across the globe, and it has given us an insight, a much faster insight on how technology will be able to come to the next generation and more performant supply chains. So as a leader industry, we are constantly on the lookout for new technologies and new innovations, right? And I want to close off with saying that it is not only about the spectacular things. It's not only about the robots. It's not only about the autonomous vehicles or smartwatches and smart devices. It is certainly also about the underlying software solutions that provide us better access, faster access, and cheaper access to data. And that is why the topic of today around blockchain and artificial intelligence is so close to our heart and actually top of our list when we talk about innovation and bringing innovation to our operations. Unfortunately, there is no time to dig a lot deeper, but if you feel interested and you want to know more about them, on Spotify or on the Apple platforms, you can find our DHL podcast, The Future of Technology Logistics, where there's a lot more to find and listen to on this topic. I want to thank you a lot for listening, and I hope to be with you face to face next year in Barcelona. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jens. We heard from him the Cisco example where they can onboard their partners faster, cheaper, more securely, and also warehouses. I think that's where the next battle is going to be fought from an IoT, 5G, and even blockchain perspective. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I want to thank everybody who came here physically. I know I had to go through a number of tests and those digital badges. So thanks again. And why don't we give our panelists a round of applause here? Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.